Okay, we're reading Va'inyan who?
V'inyan that we read. So we said that eating the matzah, that's the iskafia. That's the bittul. And that's the preparation for the ishapcha, the change, the transformation that the midos, that the faculties of the emotions will go through during the Sfiras Omer.
Why is it iskafia to eat matzah?
What do you mean? Even how it's prepared is iskafia.
But it's tasted a mon. It tasted just like the mon. Tasted again in. No?
I don't know.
Some sort of midrash.
Okay, I don't know about that midrash.
Okay, so which page you on? 12?
Yeah, 12 in the middle of the right column. אך אפשר להיות בחינת התהפכה מבלי שתקדים תחילה בחינת התקפיה. You can't have התהפכה, transformation, sweetening, as we called it, without first having iskafia, some subjugation, submission of one's self. שהיא בחינת ביטול, and that's what we call self-nullification. בטל רצונך, you cancel, you nullify your will before Hashem's will. And it's very interesting that in a sikha about this week's parsha, the Rebbe takes the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Hashem to just do as if he's raising the Mishkan, and Hashem would make it raise by itself, make it rise by itself. And the Rebbe says from this we learn that Hashem doesn't demand from you to do superhuman feats. He only demands that you do what you can. Yeah. And he says, of course, or that's a word he doesn't use. It's very interesting. I don't think the Rebbe ever used that word.
Why? It's a misnagdish word?
Yeah. It's a way of taking, I'm not sure, but I think it's a way of taking the Shara Bitachon in Chavos Alavavos and sort of and taking one word out of it and then missing the whole point. And so I think that was probably the reason, because he reads the Shara Bitachon very differently. He actually reads it. He actually takes the whole thing and addresses it. That Hashem wants you to succeed. Hashem wants you to fulfill your purpose. And the Ishtadlus is not like that. The Ishtadlus is like sort of like to survive. That's how people understand. It's like doing the minimum. You have to do something. You have to do some Ishtadlus. Who said that that's enough? That's not. I mean, it's a word that appears there in Shara Bitachon, but it's not the message. The message is that you have to have bitachon, not to do ishtadlus. It's very different. It's like missing the whole point. Anyway, so the Rebbe says, what does Hashem want from you? What he wants really is that you dedicate your will to His. That's all. But the moment that it's your will, you should work with it the way you would work with anything that you want. I mean, would a person spare any means and things that he wants? Of course, he works very hard for it. But he says he doesn't expect you to do superhuman feats. What about all the times that I tell you about Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh, those are exceptions. They're exceptional times that you need Mesiras Nefesh. Kabbalah Soul, in that sikha, he says it's not exactly the same thing. He doesn't make the exact explanation.
Where's the sikha?
It's a Parshas Naso Tafshin Nun Hey. And like we said, there has to be nullification in between. And then he gave us the new mashal, or the rarely used mashal parable for understanding the ayin in between every two yesh, the state of nothingness between every two beings. So the first one is well known, like the seed that's planted in the earth. At first it has to rot and has to become nothingness, as it were, meaning it becomes part of the earth. And then it can grow into a tree and have the ability to give a lot of produce, much more than the seed could. And then he gives a second one, which we saw yesterday from Tmura, from Maseches Tmura, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. that when the chick hatches from the egg, so about the state of the egg, Abaye says there, Ki kagavil afa be'almahu. When it's in an egg state, it's like the earth. So here we have that in the category of plant life, and in the category of living, of animate beings, those that move, there are examples of this nothingness between every two states of being. And obviously in the human being, that's the state of self-nullification. And that's sort of what the matzah represents. So he said, why does the matzah represent? Because you don't let it become a being. You stop it. Meaning in the inanimate, I guess matzah would be the example of the inanimate. So in the inanimate, there are certain processes like leavening that are considered to be what gives at least that inanimate object its being. And you stop it. You stop it from happening. וכך אי אפשר להיות מבחינת האהבה שבלעומת זה בחינת אהבת השם, לא שלדים תחילה בחינת ביטול, כמו שאומרים בקריאת שמע, אחד ואהבת, שתחילה צריך להיות מסירת נפש בבחינת ביטול ולמסור נפשו באחד, ועל ידי זה ואהבת בכל לבבך בשני צריכה שהוא עניין התהפכה. And the same thing is what we do when we say we love Hashem in Kriyas Shema. Before we say ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך בכל נפשך בכל מאודיך, before we say we should love Hashem with all our heart and our soul and our might, first there has to be a state of nullification. Where's the state of nullification here? When you say echad, when you say one. When you say one, you should have the understanding that there's nothing in the world except for Hashem. Nothing else. That's why the usual meditation on or contemplation of the word echad is, and I think we said this like last week, that most people don't take the time to really do this, but it's chaval, because it's the best meditation in the world. It really cleanses you of everything, and it resets the soul, and it's the understanding that, look, that from above to below and in all four directions, there's only Hashem, there's nothing else. And even inside, even where I'm standing. So it's like a state of nullifying myself completely. And that's the purpose of the matzah that they ate, that we were commanded to eat on the first week of Sfiras HaOmer, which is Pesach. V'gam kodem Sfira. And also he says on the day before the Sfira, meaning on the first day of Pesach, which is not the first day of the Sfira, because we start on the second day. Ki matzah b'chinat itkafi uvitul. Ki hamatzah en ba'itnasut liot tofeach v'oleh. So the matzah it does not have a sense of being, and it is a symbol for submission and nullification because it doesn't leaven. V'gam en batam k'mo hachametz. Here's to your medrash, and it has no taste. So what might the medrash mean? So the medrash probably means that the man and like matzah had no taste. It takes on the taste of whatever else you're eating. I think that's what it means. What's the idea? The idea is, in Kabbalah, we talked about this at least once, the man comes down from the Tala di B'dolcha. Tala di B'dolcha is like the second tikkun of the Galgalta in Arich. Technically what it is. The way it's described is that you can taste in it, taste in the sense of tam. You can understand any understanding that you want. There are many, many, many faces there. And you can choose which one you want. So either, if it's like matzah and you eat it with chicken, so it tastes like chicken. In the case of man, it could be that it was abstract enough that you didn't have to add any taste. It was just whatever you had in mind, it colored it. It made it taste like that. Maybe that's the closest. But I think that what the Medrash means is that like matzah, it has no taste of its own. It goes according to where you take it to.
Chameleon. Chameleon.
Why do you say it that way? Is that how you say it in French?
That's the word, no?
In English they say chameleon.
Hmm?
Yeah. You've never heard of a chameleon?
No, that was chameleon.
That's how they call it in England?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, they were closer to the French and they loved them, as we know. So that might be the reason. Very interesting. Again, it's like a chameleon, like a chameleon. Yofi. Ve'abe'atalia. And the two are dependent, meaning being in a state of submission and self-nullification is dependent on not having taste and not having a sense of pride of being leavened. When you have taste, it's like saying, I have a reason. Okay? Why are you against this? I have a reason. Why? Because. It's not. Hashem has reasons. Why do you need a reason? What for? Why are you so adamant about what you think? That's pride, because this is how I understand things now and I don't want to change it. So the two are dependent on one another. The person doesn't have any sense of pride, doesn't need to find taste, meaning reason, in what he does. Okay, so he's not saying that this is what you should do all the time. He's saying this is what you need as a prerequisite. Why? Because any work, when you begin to do it, any work that's worth doing, when you begin to do it, the work itself is probably tasteless in the beginning. As you move on, you progress, you find more and more reason for it. You find more and more satisfaction in the reasons behind it. But in the beginning, it's not a lot of fun. So you have to have that beginning without itnasut, without looking for what do I get out of this, without a sense of being, of pride, in order to be able to continue the work further. And that's why there's matzah, the bread of poverty. And poverty, again, is poverty in das. Das is the reason, the consciousness, the rational mind. Before we receive the Torah. To receive the Torah, you have to cleanse yourself, purge yourself of all these reasons, rational considerations. Because you have to accept it in submission. That's what we mean when we say, my soul, my psyche should be like dust before everybody, like earth before everybody. And after that, after I'll be like dust, like earth, then you can open my heart with your Torah. Because by reaching the state of my soul is like dust, then you can turn around, then you can have the transformation, and itapcha literally means turn over, and instead of being back to back with Hashem, you become face to face.
Because nobody can be face to face with Hashem.
You're always face to face with Hashem.
You can't look at my face and live.
That's something else. You can't see it, but you can look at it. Asura na ve'ereh. On the contrary, it says that anybody who's, I just saw that medrash yesterday for some reason, 2 days ago, that anybody who's in a spiritual pursuit is constantly wants to get closer and closer to do what? To see more and more. I mean, obviously Hashem has no face. So when we say that we're facing Him, it means that there's a relationship, that it's not just technical. So in this sense, submission is greater than transformation. Because even though he still hasn't yet transformed his faculties, his emotions, meaning he hasn't improved himself yet, still it's nullification through and through. And through this awakening from below, his self-nullification, that he removes himself from everything. And that's what it means to be in submission. Causes, meaning he elevates himself. Now we're getting to the reason why I call this series Elevating and Being Elevated. So the elevating yourself is by itkafia, by submitting the ego. Itaruta Dilela, then because of that there comes in being elevated by Hashem. Liot nimshach mibchinat sovev kol almin. And that's Hashem shining down His light that surrounds all worlds on you. And it becomes bchinat malchut. And it comes into your life. Shu gam ken bchinat istalkut atzmuto ma'oto yitbarach lachayot ruach shvalim velev yitkeim. And this causes it's a difficult sentence to explain. I don't understand it. Skip.
Which?
להיות נמשך מבחינת סובב כל מי מבחינת מלכות, שהוא גם כן מבחינת הסתלקות עצמותו ומהותו יתברך. That the malchus is also a degree of the elevation of his essence and the self of God, to give life to those who are lowly and to those who are decrepit, I guess. In any case, the Sovev is able to reach down into everywhere. Okay, I'll explain it this way. That the Sovev, as opposed to the Memale can't reach down too far. Because we said that it reaches only as far as it can be integrated. So if there's no vessel, there's no weight for the light that fills all worlds, for the conscious light of Hashem to appear in low places. Because they don't have the vessels to contain it. So you have a very simple Yid who doesn't have any learning and doesn't understand anything abstract. What kind of light of Hashem are they going to experience? But the Sovev has no such barriers, because
No limitation.
it's not limited by what you know or what you don't know, what your capacity is, what it isn't. That's why it's called Sovev. It's around you. And so it can even extend all the way down to the lowest of the lows, to the people who are really the nitkaim.
Stuck.
What's stuck? That's why after Kriya Shema after we say Hashem Echad, then we say, blessed is the name of His kingdom forever and ever. היינו להיות בחינת ברכה והמשכה בבחינת מלכותו לעולם ועד. That what we're saying is that His light should come down even to the lowest level, which we say is His kingdom forever and ever. And the word and ever, va'ed, b'chilufeyo atvan is echad. It's the same word as one. But before we said one, there's only God. Okay? We contemplated that when we said Shema Yisrael, the first pasuk. When we say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'Olam V'ed, the thinking is exactly the opposite. That it should come down fully. That oneness, which is beyond everything, should come down and be reflected everywhere. And Va'ed is like saying Echad, it's also like everywhere, but here it's in B'chilufei Advan, it's by transmuting the letters, using some mapping, to get from Aleph to Vav, and so on. That allows Hashem's light to appear everywhere, but this time as Malchus. Okay? This time as His kingdom. And not as there's nothing else but Hashem. Okay? There's nothing except Hashem, but in kingdom it's like saying everything is Hashem's kingdom. So there is something here. Another way that this is said in Chassidus, which is this was a hard idea to capture, and the person who captured it was I think it was Rabbi Isaac of Homel, and I don't know where I think he got it from the Alter Rebbe himself in a certain moment when the Alter Rebbe tried to explain the difference, and he said that there are two statements. They seem similar, but they're not. One says God is everything, and everything is God. That's the other one. So God is everything, Hashem hu hakol, or hakol hu Hashem.
What's the difference?
Oh, the difference is where you start. If you start that Hashem hu hakol, so what is there? There's only God. He's everything. There's only God. If you say Hashem hakol hu Hashem, the opposite, everything is God, that's like saying everything is divine. Okay? And that's the Malchus. So the first one is like the Shema. The Shema is saying Hashem hu Hakol. God is everything. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. He's everything. There's nothing else. He's all there is. Don't go looking for trees or grass or whatever. There's nothing else. Only Hashem. The second one is like Baruch Shem K'vo Malchus L'Olam V'Ed, which is Hakol hu Hashem. Everything is God. And you have to, you can't stop. Yeah, it's a pulse. So you have to keep fluctuating between the two. Because holding on to any one of them will destroy half the world. If you say Hashem hu Hakol, so there's nothing else. There's no world anymore. Why live as a human being? If you say Hakol hu Hashem, so that becomes like pantheism. And so it's not Hashem the transcendent, the way we know him. So you have to move between them. Another way of saying this is like transcendental. The first part would be universal transcendentalism. There's nothing but God's transcendent nature. That's the first one. Hashem hu Hakol. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The second one is pantheism. Everything is divine. You can't stop. You gotta keep moving. That's the secret of the Jewish. In the end, that's the secret of all of Jewish spirituality. That it's not a state; it's a dynamic. That's the secret that I don't know why they don't teach. You have to say it once. That a Jew, by definition, is constantly moving between two states, at least two states. Sometimes it's more. But that by definition is what makes it. That's also by definition what makes a person healthy psychologically. Any person who psychologically is fixed and is not constantly moving between different conceptual schemes of himself, of the world, so you're not dynamic, you're not flexible, you'll be broken. Because the world is not. You have to be plastic in the end. There has to be plasticity. That's the main thing. You have to know how to constantly shift. Somebody would say, so it means you hold by nothing. No. I'm constantly shifting between what in the Torah is even given as contrary points of view. They're given in the Torah. That's the essence of all Jewish spirituality. In the end, that's the most important thing. So just in the Tanakh itself, we find like at least 3 or 4 ways to describe this fluctuation between two opposites. Famous one is Ratzov V'Shov, is run and return. But Avram's, we saw some months ago, Haloch V'Nasoah. He's walking and traveling. And then there's a few others I don't remember right now. V'zeu inyan, uvenefesh. I skipped again? Yeah, no. וזהו ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד, היינו להיות בחינת ברכה והמשכה מבחינת מלכותו לעולם ועד, כי ועד בחילופי ית ונחד, ואמרו רזן, and the sages said, כל מקום שמר ועד, every place that says forever, אין לו הפסק, and has no end. היינו להיות מלך, מלך, ימלוך, עד אין קץ. And that allows Hashem's kingdom to be forever. And again, by kingdom we mean his appearance even in the lowest things. ובנפש היינו, and in the soul, what does this mean? שלא להיות בחינת שינויים תוך התפילה ואחר התפילה כל היום. שהשינויים הם בחינת וימלוך וימות. So, we said that what we give is from below is the world of change, because we live in change. Okay? So our awakening from below, again, our awakening is always within the confines of change. And so if we were only left to our own devices, so what would we have? We would have the regular roller coaster of life. The regular roller coaster of life says, sometimes I'm close to Hashem, sometimes I'm far from Hashem, sometimes I love my wife, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like watermelon, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go to work, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do the right thing, a lot of times I don't do the right thing.
Otherwise, life would be very boring.
Yeah, and it's a roller coaster. And people get tired of it. They don't know what to do, and they say, so who am I in the end? Am I the guy who's at the top of the roller coaster, climbing up, at the very, very top, yay, I'm at the top? Or am I the guy who's crying and screaming his head off as he plunges to the depths of the bottom? Which one am I? I don't know who I am. That's how life is. That's how it is when you're left within the confines of the submission part. No, not the submission part. You're left in the confines of human consciousness. That's how it is. You want to get to something permanent. You want to have something permanent. You want to wake up every day at the same time and daven seriously and do your work seriously, and you want everything to be constant. That can only come from above. That means being elevated. It's not elevating yourself. It's not the work that you do with yourself, because the work you do with yourself, it's constant work all the time. Especially when you're downhill, you have to work twice as hard to pull yourself up to the norm, to what you're used to. But if you want to receive from above, but if you want to be constant, when you want to have some kind of measure of consistency that doesn't require your infinite investment all the time, that can only come from above. Because what is below, that's called Vayimloch Vayamot. It's called the reigned and he died. He reigned and he died. Whatever we build every day, Malchus, for instance, why do we daven 3 times a day? Because we finish davening, and everything we built topples down. So when we come around to Mincha time, it's all broken. You feel in yourself. I davened in the morning? Really? I didn't know I davened in the morning. I don't remember it. But it's not like I didn't do anything. I did do something. I didn't waste my time. So where did it all go? Well, it's Malchus, so it toppled down. That's called Vayimloch Vayamot. But when you want it to be Vayimloch and know, and like the king Hadar, the 8th king there, who didn't die, it doesn't say that he died. So that has to come from above. That has to be some contribution from God. So the awakening from below, that's called giving a donation to Hashem. So I'm going up to Hashem. Let's just read the end, so that.
You lost me a little bit there.
Ve'achar kach ktiv, on the next page, just so that we read the end, so before reading the explanation. Ve'achar kach ktiv, kol nadiv libo yevi'ah et trumat havaya. Hi b'chinat hamshacha milemala lemata. And then it says, every man who has a giving heart, will bring the donation of havaya. What's the donation of havaya? It's what Hashem donated. Okay? Hashem donated. Trumat havaya is like saying that this truma, this donation, belongs to Hashem. So I gave my donation. What's my donation? The nullification. And what does Hashem give me in return? His donation. And His donation is consistency. His donation, hi b'chinat hamshacha milemala lemata. That's the drawing down from above to below. Truma leshon hafrasha kanal, trei mimea. And truma means to give a piece of, like 1, or in this case 2 from 100. Hainu liyot nimshach mibchinat havaya. So it's like Hashem drawing down from havaya, from His essence, hu b'chinat sovev kol hamin, the light that surrounds our world, me'aveh tamid, into the state in our world of constant recreation. כי הייעוד שבראש מורה לפעולה, כמו ככה יעשה איוב, בחינת הוויה, שבבחינת ממלא כל המין יוד צמצום. So what does he bring down? He brings down a constant state. ככה יעשה איוב כל הימים. So תרומה להשם is like saying, like Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Trumat Hashem, the donation of Hashem is that Hashem is constantly bringing into reality the state that you want to be in. He's constantly giving it to you. That's the Yud at the beginning of Yud Kei Vav Kei. It means consistency. He's constantly bringing it into being. So if you only are left to your devices, to your abilities, so you're on a roller coaster. There's no other way that it can be. And you're always going up and down. And the point is to get to a state that's called what we call the Avar Haba. We had a lot of names for it in this book, which we're now finishing. That this allows you to remain in a consistent state all the time. That's what we meant when we said that from our perspective, everything is always changing. From Hashem's perspective, everything is the same. That's one of the meanings of moving from a state of feeling the world as we normally feel it, as we experience it, as being something in flux all the time. Everything is changing. Okay? Everything is changing. Et lezeh, there's a time for this, time for that. 28 times that Shlomo talks about, the King Solomon talks about. From that to move to Hashem's picture of reality, which is that it's constant, it's fixed. It's like frozen. Nothing's changing. But we don't mean frozen in the sense that nothing is happening, but that all that is happening is very constant. It's almost boring. In that sense, it's almost like something but there are things that you want to be boring at. There are certain things that you certainly want to be a total bore. Whenever we talk to you, all you have in your mind is another mitzvah. You're boring. You're a boring guy. Okay, can't you ever do something wild and crazy and throw off? I don't want to. I'm happy with my consistency. So somebody would say, so you're frozen. No, I'm not frozen. It's just that I do the same things. I'm not frozen at all. When I learn, for instance, I constantly have new understandings. But that's because you go infinitely deeper in the same place. It's like the difference between depth and width. I'm not looking for more width. I'm looking for more depth. It's like, I guess, in marriage. Why don't you play the dating game? Just keep dating your whole life, and whoever you like. And the person is not from. What will he do? Ideally, every few weeks, when you get bored with the woman you're with, go look for somebody else. Or every time you're bored with the guy you're with, go look for a different guy. That's width. Yeah, somebody would argue you're closing yourself off to experiences. You don't meet anybody. It's this, it's that. The truth is that there's a different dimension called depth. That if you really believe that a human being is infinite, then even a full lifetime with somebody else won't be enough to fully experience the depth of their soul. And for that, you need to go into depth and not into width, or breadth, or however you would call it. And so that's the difference between these two. Why is it called that every person of a giving heart? So the givers here are the patriarchs, who are called nedivim v'roim. Ma yafu pa'amayich ba'ne'alim bat nadiv. Bat nadiv, the daughter of the giver. Nadiv is Avram, the daughter of Avram. So the patriarchs were called givers, nedivim, and they were also called shepherds. כי נדבן הוא בחינת משפיע מטובו לזולתו, וכן הרואה רואה צאנו במראה טוב, מאכל ומשקיע אותם. כמו שכתוב, נדיבי עמים נאספו עם אלוקי אברהם, להושיבים נדיבים נדיבי עמו, קראו הנדיבי ים, שמעשה אבות היה לחפור בארות, ולחפור עובם בכל בארות אשר חפרו בימי אברהם, שבארו בחינת גילוי המים מנעלם תוך על הארץ. Why were the patriarchs called givers? שכל מעשיהם היה להביא בחינת סובב כל עמים, בחינת אלם בגילוי. Because everything that they wanted to do, their whole purpose in life, all their memale, all their integration of godliness was in order to reveal Hashem's universality in this light that surrounds all beings, everything. So that every aspect of reality would be illuminated by Hashem's presence. That's why they're called those of a giving heart. Okay. So they're the ones who allow the Trumas Hashem, the donation of Hashem, not the donation to Hashem, to appear. And they signify, the patriarchs signify the state of the surrounding light revealing itself. The meaning is that in the same way, this is where Chazal take this from, that the patriarchs did all the mitzvahs, but they were not commanded to. In the future, we will also do all the mitzvahs without being commanded to. And it says that Olam Haba, mitzvot betelot la'olam haba, that the mitzvahs are nullified in the world to come. What do you mean nullified? We won't put tefillin on? Of course we will, but it won't be a mitzvah. Because when the surrounding light appears, you can't say a mitzvah. A mitzvah is only when the surrounding light needs to appear. But once it's here, there's no more commandment. The commandment is only in order, let's say it like this now, that the aspect of commanding me now, to feel commanded, is a revelation of the surrounding light. Say it like this. If you're not willing to play at this game called mitzvahs, you can't feel commanded. If I take Stam, the Jew who grew up without anything, or just a person anywhere, do you feel commanded? Do you feel obligated to do what it says in the Torah? Why would he? Where would the obligation come from? You have to get on the field to start playing. You have to enter into this world called, there's a relationship with God through the Torah. Once you get into that game, now there's rules. Oh, now it's interesting. And think about it, like whenever people look at a bit, I guess baseball's probably not your strongest.
Not my greatest game.
Not your greatest metaphor in the world. But I guess most of the people listening in English probably know what baseball is. So when you look at a baseball diamond, once you get used to the fact that there's this diamond and this is first, second, third, and home. I don't think probably in England you never got a chance to do this, but in America, if you're walking over a baseball field and you see the diamond because it's where the green is, it's almost like you can't ignore it. It's not like a soccer field. Soccer field, there's nothing in the middle that means anything. So it's sort of like the two goals at the two ends. You can walk across the soccer field, it doesn't mean anything to you. You wouldn't even notice you were there. But on a baseball field, because of the way it's demarcated, because of the way it's structured, you can't play soccer on it. You just can't. It's like a sacrilege. It doesn't work. It's really weird. I always I mean, you can break it down, but you have to work to break it down. You have to break down the feeling in your mind that this is first base. What am I doing here? It's like the moment you get onto this field, you act in a certain way. It normalizes you in a certain way. And that's the same thing with Torah and mitzvahs. The moment you enter onto the field, Hashem is giving you the consistency, the borders, the limits, in a consistent way, thanks to the fact that you got on the field. Thanks to the fact that you just entered. Those are the mitzvahs. They tell you, this you do, this you don't do, and so on and so forth. All these things, they come because you're willing to participate. Because there's nothing out there that says you have to put tefillin on. There's nothing in the world that says you have to put tefillin on. So when you get into the Torah, when you get into this, meaning you did itauta diltata, you awaken from below to enter into this. Hashem gives you the itauta dileila, He gives you the consistency. The consistency now is that you have to put tefillin on every day of your life. It's not something you would achieve outside. You wouldn't be able to achieve this. Now, I told you, the whole world now, the whole business world, the whole coaching world, everybody's into the most important thing in the world is what is your morning routine. And the best they can say is routine. The Jew doesn't have a routine. He has mitzvahs that he has to do. It's much more than a routine. Routine is like, let's make it mindless, and then we'll do it every day. That's the beauty of a mitzvah. You don't have to be mindless. You can be very mindful, but you still feel obligated. It's the same way that, what, would you want people to play baseball mindlessly? That wouldn't be interesting. No game played that way would be interesting. So the rules, when they are rules, they enhance what you're doing. They don't, I mean, otherwise it's just a field and people can just throw a ball around and hit each other with a bat and whatever else, and there's nothing there. You follow the idea that the Avos were like the people who were in pure freedom and just did a routine. They had nothing from Hashem to make it consistent. And yet they believed that everybody, by doing this, everybody will be able to experience godliness. And then the Torah was given. So that, like, setting up that routine, that was like the nullification. And then the Torah was given. The Torah being given from above, that's like Hashem drawing down His surrounding light. And saying, here it is as mitzvos, here it is as commandments. It's a whole different level of doing things. Because now you're not just going to do them because you decided to, because it's a routine, but because you're obligated to. The moment you get into that world of obligation, so some people will hate it. They say, like, I don't want to be obligated. You don't understand what it gives you, the consistency that it gives you, and the ability to be mindful in a state of habit, as it were. There's no price for that. It's so precious. And eventually Hashem's going to take it off. The world to come becomes like the time of the Avos. It becomes like the time of the Patriarchs, where there's no more obligation. You won't feel the obligation anymore. You won't be able to feel obligated, even if you want to, because there won't be any mitzvah anymore. This is a very limited part of history where the obligation comes from above, where the consistency comes from above. But then once it's over, and Soviv is revealed everywhere, and the light that surrounds our world is revealed everywhere, it becomes universal, so it goes back to being routine. Either you want it or you don't want it. It depends on you. So you'll put tefillin on, but you'll never be able to feel obligated again. And that's not as great as you might think. Good. So there needs to be developed a little bit more. But that's what's called God's kingdom. God's kingdom is, everything is, it's almost like saying that if you're living in America and you feel, or in, say, in England, you're living in England and you feel a subject of HMS, or whatever her name is, HM. You don't have to call that out all the time. It just is. Whether you think about it or you don't think about it, it just is. That's what it means to live in God's kingdom. Everything is godly. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. Want to put tefillin on, don't want to put tefillin on, same thing. But for you, things will never be the way they used to be before God was made into king, as it were, before the surrounding light was revealed. Once the surrounding light is revealed, everything is a subject of God. So, this needs to be explained more, but that's the...
It's a little bit of a deep concept. Extremely deep concept.
Okay.
We need to review this.
Good Shabbos.